let's just jump right in with New York City mayoral candidate Whitney Tilson. Why are you running for mayor?
Well, I've lived here 31 years, raised 3 kids here, built 6 businesses here, grown to love this city after moving down from the dreaded rival Boston, where I'd lived a number of years. And I've been very active in the Democratic Party for well over 20 years, and saw an opportunity last November, a pretty open field. American voters and New York City voters were clearly looking for change. And I thought I could run. I'm running in the Mike Bloomberg lane as an outsider business person, first time candidate, not a career politician. And so saw a lane, wanted to give New Yorkers a choice. Figured, well, if I win, that's great. If I don't, I can be a powerful voice for things, issues that I care about, and say things that none of the career politicians are willing to say.
And tell us a little bit more about your background. What were you doing other than living in New York City before jumping into this mayoral race?
Well, I grew up in Tanzania and Nicaragua, child of teachers who met and married in the Peace Corps. And so that was the first half of my life, lived all over. And then moved down here, lived the second half of my life down here. I went to Harvard undergrad, Harvard Business School. And after my first job out of college I was employee number 2 at Teach for America. So I've been very involved in education reform, been on the board of KIPP charter schools for 20 plus years here in New York City. So that's been one of my passions, addressing the systemic educational inequalities in our city and state and country. And got into the investment business, discovered Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I'm a value guy, ran a hedge fund for a bunch of years, built a conference business, newsletter business, which I still run to this day. And so been very, the 3 pillars of my life: my family, my 3 adult daughters all went away to college, are now back in the city. My youngest just graduated college, is going to be a 3rd grade teacher here in the fall, just moved back home. We are reverse empty nesters. So I've got my family, my work, and my philanthropy. I've been on the board of, well over a dozen nonprofits, mostly related to education, improving education for low-income minority kids.
And the thing that caught my eye about your mayoral campaign is, as far as I can tell, you've been the most clear and direct in calling out the risk to the city of Zohran Mamdani. Could you explain to us, for the benefit of those who haven't seen you doing this in the debates and in some direct mail, what is your objection to Zohran Mamdani, and what is the risk that he poses to New York City?
Well, he's completely unqualified. He's 33 years old and has never managed more than 5 people prior to a few months ago in this campaign. And so that would be number 1. Number 2, my wife and children are Jewish. We've been members of Central Synagogue for 25 years. And it's in writing, it's on videos. Zohran Mamdani has been obsessed with the Palestinian cause, which is fine, but has with hatred of Israel. Going back to his teenage years. He calls it, the motivating thing in his life and in his political career. And lastly, he's a proud leader. You can, again, look at his bio on his Twitter feed, proud leader of the Democratic Socialists of America. And if you look at their policy platform, it calls, just go to their website. It's in writing. I'm not making anything up here. That government ownership of all major industries, disarm, dismantle, and defund the police, decriminalize all misdemeanors, including theft and assault, empty our prisons. The list goes on. And it's an extreme radical agenda. So Zohran Mamdani is not your typical progressive, Brad Lander, Scott Stringer, whatever, who are the other progressives in the race. He, I believe, is the DSA's Trojan horse. He's a very skilled politician. He's run a great race. He has a great smile. I like him personally. But that's why he's super dangerous, because his ideas are extremely radical and totally disconnected from reality. And again, coming back to New York's Jewish community, over 1 million Jews live in New York, including my own family, and he really makes us feel unsafe. He has been whipping up mobs that have, been occupying buildings, assaulting passersby. My daughter wears a Jewish star, and I should not have to worry about her wearing a Jewish star walking around New York City.
And so this race, obviously, it's not just you and Zoran. For our viewers and
Yes.
listeners who live in New York City, why should people vote for you rather than the other candidates who include people like former Governor Andrew Cuomo,
Right.
the other quote progressives that you just mentioned? Um, Explain why somebody should vote for
Yes.
you rather than the other ones.
Well, there's no harm in voting for me. It is ranked choice voting. I'm currently polling at a few percent, as is pretty every candidate is polling single digits of the 11 candidates on the ballot, except for Mondani and Cuomo. So, very realistically, with 5 days to go in this race, according to the betting sites, based on the polls and numerous polls, it is 99% likely that either Mamdani or Cuomo will win this primary when we go through multiple rounds of ranked choice voting. So I won't bore your listeners with the details, but I've been telling people rank me one, rank Cuomo two, and rank anybody else you want, 3, 4, and 5. Just don't rank Mamdani. And effectively, the way ranked choice voting works means it doesn't hurt Cuomo. It doesn't hurt if you believe, as I do, that we must not elect a 33-year-old radical socialist and hand the keys of our city over to that person, and the even more radical extremists that are part of his DSA organization. They call each other comrade. So his comrades. Then you can rank me one, Cuomo two, when I am knocked out in, according to the latest polls, the 5th round of ranked choice voting. Anyone who voted Cuomo number two, or for that matter, 3, 4, or 5, that vote will accrue to him. And Cuomo, whatever you think of him, is the only person that can stop Zoran Mondani from becoming our mayor. So I actually think he'd be an effective mayor, and his reputation, his fearsome reputation, is actually an asset to trying to get anything done in this fractious city and dealing with Albany and dealing with the federal government. So I'm optimistic that he'd be a good mayor. But even if you don't think he'd be a great mayor and have reservations about whatever it is, he's got a long history. You got to be practical. Sometimes you go into the voting booth and you don't vote for your favorite. You vote for the candidate you dislike the least. And so if that's how you view Cuomo, you got to rank him somewhere. Don't rank Mamdani anywhere. And I'd love to have your first place vote, but it doesn't, let's be honest. That's not going to matter.
Watched a recent mayoral debate where you talked about growth, which
Yes.
I was super excited about because it's somewhat unusual to hear politicians, either Republicans or Democrats these days, talk about growth. But it's super important. I wrote about it in my book about President Kennedy. Um, Tell me more about the growth theme in your campaign. How do you plan to promote growth? Why is growth important? What sort of reaction are you getting to that particular growth theme?
Right. Well, part of the reason I entered the race is I said, okay, if I win, that's great. But if I don't, I can get on the debate stage. I can participate in all the mayoral forums. I can talk to the media, people like you, and get a message out that, all the other Democrats on the stage, all they can talk about is how to spend the taxpayer money. And my point is, where do you think that money comes from? It comes from having an incredible economy here. New York City is 5% of US GDP. For centuries, we have been the center of global commerce and trade, and now technology, et cetera, et cetera. Not to mention all of our small businesses that are the backbone of the city. And every candidate should be talking about how do we make New York more business friendly so that people want to invest here and grow. That's what creates jobs. So under Mike Bloomberg, who was, I think, the greatest mayor certainly in my lifetime, I said this at the debate. I thought it was a very good line. I said, I want to double taxes. I want to double spending. But I want to do it by doubling the size of the economy. And that is what happened under Mike Bloomberg in 12 years. The economy grew at 6% a year. That's a double in 12 years. And so he didn't have to raise the tax rate. We already have the highest tax rates on both individuals and businesses in the country. And we're already losing population. We're losing businesses, not just rich people going down to Florida. We're losing working class people. So I'm the only candidate on the stage who's like, we must not raise taxes, but let's focus on doubling the amount of taxes we collect by growing at 6% a year, not 2% a year.
Super. And I also wanted to ask you on the policy side about education policy. You mentioned your experience with Teach for America. I think education policy is actually how I first sort of came to know about you, is you've got this education email list.
Right.
And so charter schools in New York, I think Eric Adams is supportive. That there's been a lot of growth. What's your view on charters, other mayoral control of the New York City public schools? Some of the other places like Florida are doing private school scholarships, which
Yeah.
so give me your 2-minute education policy speech, and
Sure.
could you be the schools chancellor in a Cuomo mayoral administration?
Well, if he does become mayor, that is the one thing I would ask him to focus on and spend some political capital on. I think I could find someone with more experience actually in the belly of that beast who could probably run it better than I could, but that's an area I'd definitely focus on. During the good days of Mike Bloomberg and Joel Klein, when you had mayoral control and a mayor willing to use that control to really sort of shake up a system that by and large is run by and for adults. And children don't vote. They don't donate to politicians, right? And it's a political system. You gotta play the political game. So absolutely, every 3 years or so, you got to renew mayoral control. That's critical. I would appoint a super reform oriented chancellor. Yes, I would have the DOE work closely with charter schools, which are public schools. About 15% of New York City school kids are in about 300 charter schools, and we have the best charter sector in the country. But let's be real, even if we were to expand that and help with co-locating facilities, right, where charter schools have a floor of a building, because obviously real estate's super expensive in New York, so that's critical. Charter schools might grow to be 20%, but probably. So what about the other 80%? And the answer is you need a schools chancellor willing to and a mayor willing to do a tough negotiation with the teachers union on the contracts, so that, for example, you can pay teachers more in teacher shortage areas, teachers willing to teach in high need schools, bilingual special ed, et cetera. This lockstep pay system, for example, is madness, and it hurts poor kids most. Because if there's an opening for an English teacher on the Upper East Side and in the South Bronx at the same pay, you get 20 qualified applicants in the rich neighborhood and 0 in the poor neighborhood, right? Well, what does that tell you? It's a harder job in a high need school, and most teachers are women. It's not as safe a neighborhood, right? So of course, all the talent's going to flow to the kids who don't need the best teachers because they come from a rich family, right? And the poor kids who most need the great teachers to escape from the poverty they were born into, instead we give them the worst, right? So I could give you so many examples of how the system, is set up for the benefit of adults, but ends up screwing it's mediocrity across the board, but particularly screws poor kids. And it's a huge political fight, but you got to have a mayor who doesn't need the job, like Mike Bloomberg, like I would be. Or hopefully a mayor who is willing to do battle and has a fearsome reputation, like Andrew Cuomo.
And where do the Catholic schools or the Jewish schools fit in with that? Because the charter school growth has made it harder in some ways for them.
Yeah, those have always been good options, and so I applaud those schools, and there is some city and state funding. That I was just out in Borough Park yesterday in the Hasidic community, and they only have 2 public schools left in that community because all the Hasidic Jews, Orthodox Jews, whatever, send their kids to yeshivas. And we pay for transportation for special needs kids and so forth, which is fine. So it's all part of a milieu, and I want parents to have as many choices as possible. But I want every school to have the same accountability as charter schools, because having served on the board at KIPP for 20 years, under the charter school law, the reason we have such a good charter sector is that bad operators don't get a charter and don't get the public money. But then every 5 years you get evaluated, and it's a real evaluation. And if you cannot demonstrate good financial controls, et cetera, but most importantly, that you're educating kids, you get put on probation or shut down. And my question is why aren't the other 85% of public schools held to that same standard of accountability, where success is rewarded and the good schools are encouraged and funded to expand, but the failing schools, there are consequences.
So this New York mayoral race is of national importance, and the Democratic Party has these. It's the largest city in the country, obviously.
By far, the 4 largest boroughs in New York, if they were independent cities, would all be in the 8 largest cities in the country. It's insane how big this city is.
And the Democratic Party nationally has got these ideological rifts and tensions similar to those we're seeing in this Democratic primary in New York. How do you think those ideological rifts among Democrats in New York and nationally are ultimately going to resolve? Like, who's going to win this contest between the Zoran Mandani, Bernie Sanders, AOC wing of the Democratic Party, and people like you who seem less extreme and more moderate? And
good government, run things better, et cetera. I'm clearly, part of my reason for running for mayor of New York is not just to obviously, if I were to win and become mayor, that would give me a huge platform, et cetera. But I always knew going in, when I decided to run in November, that was going to be a tough path, given I'm not a billionaire, contrary to some media reports. I don't have $73 million like Mike Bloomberg did to drop into the race to buy myself name recognition. But I figured I could be a voice for rationality and dragging my party back to the sensible center, good government, and I think I have been, on the debate stage, talking about the importance of economic growth and creating a business-friendly environment to address the housing crisis. I mean, you've probably read Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson's book Abundance about how blue states have taken good ideas, environmental regulations, zoning regulations, et cetera, and gone way too far and created affordability crises in blue states that's driving people out. And so, when we Democrats are losing the working class on affordability, taxes, crime and safety, and all, what happened in the election in November nationally, where we got crushed? 90% of U.S. counties shifted toward Donald Trump. This is after conviction for felonies, after January 6th and all. And still people voted for him. That's how badly we Democrats have lost the narrative on just sort of bread and butter quality of life stuff. And then you throw in, the crazy, social issues or whatever, where we've allowed ourselves as a party to be defined by the far left. And we handed Donald Trump the White House and handed Republicans Congress. I mean, how could we not be that guy?
And so is there a road out of that?
Sure. I'm part of that road. And look, I think Andrew Cuomo in 5 days beating Mamdani by hopefully a wide margin will be a powerful signal. Just last night, Michael Bennet, the senator from Colorado, old friend of mine, he ran for president, never got much traction, but he used to be superintendent of Denver Public Schools, where I got to know him. He's a businessman. He is running for governor of Colorado because he said, I think it's really important for my state, but also my party, that rather than being one of, 45 or 46 Democrats in the minority in the Senate, where you really can't do much in the minority, he's like, I can go run my state as the governor, and I can run it a lot better. And we've got an affordability crisis in Colorado where Denver public school teachers, when he was superintendent 15 years ago or so, they all lived in the city. Now he's like, they can't afford to live in the city. right? Like that's if we Democrats in states where we control and we can't address basic issues like that, we're going to keep losing. And I don't like that. I want to win. I want to take this country back from Donald Trump and his goons.
Um, Anything that I haven't asked about that you'd like to add?
Well, look, the second issue after housing, and my four words are unleash the private sector there. And every single candidate is responding to voters screaming about affordability and housing, particularly. So all of them have big housing plans. I'm the only one who really said I'm not going. Real estate developer are not three pejorative words. Those are the people we need to invest in this city. And instead, I'm telling you, they're all building. Go look at Jersey City, Hoboken, and Newark. All the New York developers have given up on this city. And they're like, I can build over there in half the time and half the cost. And a 4-year, it used to take 2 years to build your average housing in New York under Bloomberg. It's now 4 years, and with a high cost of capital, that's prohibitive. They can have something on the market, renting or selling in 2 years, right across the river. So that's where they're all going. It is no surprise that the most heavily government regulated, rent stabilization rules and Mamdani coming out, I'm going to freeze rents for 4 years, is that in that city that apparently is saying they're doing the most for renters, in fact, has the worst housing crisis in the country. That is causation, not correlation. I can tell you for sure. So that's a piece of it. The other thing I would mention is just sort of crime and safety. We as a party went too far in bail reform, discovery reform, things like that. And we basically decriminalized all low-level crime. Cops got demoralized. We didn't allow them to do their job. I mean, literally, cops tell me to this day, they have to do so much paperwork on an arrest right now that the criminal they just arrested is back out onto the streets before they've finished all the paperwork required for an arrest. So not surprisingly, you've had a big surge in a lot of quality of life crime as well. And I am a little optimistic here now because I think Mayor Adams is on his fourth police commissioner, but he's finally got a good one, Jessica Tisch, who's addressing this. Murders are down 28%, shootings are down 21% year to date in the city. And I think that's finally due to effective leadership of the NYPD. And so, again, I all other things being equal, I would like to reduce incarceration, but you take that too far and you're letting dangerous people back out on the streets. You create a revolving door that wrecks quality of life for everybody. And again, causes people to leave the city. Or, Donald Trump in the last 3 elections in New York City, his vote share has gone from 17% to 23% to 30%, the highest level in 36 years. Again, after all these scandals, after all these convictions, he doubled his vote share in New York City. So the voters in New York are pretty furious at the way that career politicians have been running the city. Rightly so.
New York City mayoral candidate Whitney Tilson, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the editors.com live video. Good luck on Tuesday and good
Thank you.
luck.
Remember, vote me one, Cuomo somewhere, and not Mamdani. It's real simple.
All right. Thanks so much. Enjoy the
All right.
rest of
Take
the
care,
day.
Ira.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.